When I drew nigh the nameless city, I knew it was accursed. I was traveling in a parched and terrible valley under the moon, and afar I saw it protruding uncannily above the sands, as parts of a corpse may protrude from an ill-made grave. Fear spoke from the age-worn stones of this hoary survivor of the deluge, this great-grandfather of the eldest pyramid, and a viewless aura repelled me and bade me retreat from the antique and sinister secrets that no man should see, and no man else had dared to see. Remote, in the desert of Araby, lies the nameless city, crumbling and inarticulate. Its low walls were nearly hidden by the sands of uncounted ages. It must have been thus before the first stones of Memphis were laid, and while the bricks of Babylon were yet unbaked. There is no legend so old as to give it a name, or to recall that it was ever alive. But it is told of in whispers around campfires, and muttered about by grandams in the tents of sheiks, so that all the tribes shun it, without wholly knowing why. It was of this place that Abdul al-Hazred, the mad poet, dreamed of the night before he sang his unexplained couplet. That is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange aeons death may die. I should have known that the Arabs had good reason for shunning the nameless city, a city told of in strange tales, but seen by no living man. Yet I defied them, and went into the untrodden waste with my camel. I alone have seen it. And that is why no other face bears such hideous lines of fear as mine, and no other man shivers so horribly when the night wind rattles the windows. I came upon it in the ghastly stillness of unending sleep. It looked at me, chilly from the rays of a cold moon amidst the desert's heat. And as I returned its look, I forgot my triumph at finding it, and stopped still with my camel to wait for the dawn. For hours I waited. The east grew grey, and the stars faded, and the grey turned to roseate light edged with gold. I heard a moaning, and saw a storm of sand stirring among the antique stones, though the sky was clear, and vast reaches of desert still. Then, suddenly above the desert's far rim came the blazing edge of the sun, seen through the sandstorm which was passing away, and, in my fevered state, I fancied that from some remote depth there came a crash of musical metal to hail the fiery disk, as Memnon hails it from the banks of the Nile. My ears rang, and my imagination seethed as I led my camel slowly across the sand to that unfocal place. That place which I alone of living men had seen. In and out amongst the shapeless foundations of houses and places I wandered, finding never a carving or inscription to tell of these men, if men they were, who built the city and dwelt therein so long ago. The antiquity of the spot was unwholesome. I longed to encounter some sign or device to prove that the city was indeed fashioned by mankind. There were certain proportions and dimensions in the ruins which I did not like. I had with me many tools, and dug much within the walls of the obliterated edifices, but progress was slow, and nothing significant was revealed. When night and the moon returned, I felt a chill wind which brought new fear, so that I did not dare to remain in the city. As I went outside the antique walls to sleep, a small sighing sandstorm gathered behind me, blowing over the grey stones, though the moon was bright, and most of the desert still. I awakened just at dawn from a pageant of horrible dreams, my ears ringing as from some metallic peal. I saw the sun peering redly through the last gusts of a little sandstorm that hovered over the Nameless City, and marked the quietness of the rest of the landscape. Once more I ventured within those brooding ruins that swelled beneath the sand like an ogre under a coverlet, and again dug vainly for relics of the forgotten race. At noon I rested. In the afternoon, I spent much time tracing the walls and bygone streets, and the outlines of the nearly vanished buildings. I saw that the city had been mighty indeed, and wondered at the source of its greatness. Myself, I pictured all the splendors of an age so distant that Chaldea could not recall it, and thought of Sarnath the Doomed, that stood in the land of Nar when mankind was young, and of Ebe, that was carven of grey stone before mankind existed. All at once, I came upon a place where the bedrock rose stark through the sand and formed a low cliff. And here I saw with joy that what seemed to promise further traces of the antediluvian people. Hewn rudely in the face of the cliff were the unmistakable facades of several small, squat rock houses or temples, whose interiors might preserve many secrets of ages too remote for calculation. Though sandstorms had long effaced any carvings which may have been outside. Very low and sand-choked were all the dark apertures near me. But I cleared one with my spade and crawled through it, carrying a torch to reveal whatever mysteries it might hold. When I was inside, I saw that the cavern was indeed a temple, and beheld plain signs of the race that had lived and worshipped before the desert was a desert. Primitive altars, pillars, and niches, all curiously low, were not absent. And though I saw no sculptures or frescoes, there were many singular stones shaped into symbols by artificial means. The lowness of the chiseled chamber was very strange, for I could hardly kneel upright. The area was so great that my torch showed only a part of it at a time. I shuddered oddly in some of the far corners, where certain altars and stones suggested forgotten rites of a terrible, revolting, and inexplicable nature. And it made me wonder what manner of men could have made and frequented such a temple. When I had seen all that the place contained, I crawled out again, avid to find what the other temples might yield. Night had now approached. Yet the tangible things I had seen made curiosity stronger than fear, so that I did not flee from the long moon-cast shadows that had daunted me when I first saw the Nameless City. In the twilight, I cleared another aperture with a new torch and crawled into it, finding more vague stones and symbols, though nothing more definite than the other temple had contained. The room was just as low, but much less broad, ending in a very narrow passage, crowded with obscure and cryptical shrines. About these shrines I was prying when the noise of a wind and my camel broke through the stillness and drew me forth to see what could have frightened the beast. The The moon was gleaming vividly over the primitive ruins, lighting a dense cloud of sand that seemed blown by a strong but increasing wind from some point along the cliff ahead of me. I knew it was this chilly, sandy wind which had disturbed the camel, and I was about to lead him to a place of better shelter, when I chanced to glance up and saw that there was no wind atop the cliff. This astonished me and made me fearful again. But I immediately recalled the sudden local winds that I had seen and heard before at sunrise and at sunset. I judged it was a normal thing. Decided it came from some rock fissure leading to a cave. I watched the troubled sand trace it to its source, soon perceiving that it came from the black orifice of a temple a long distance south of me, almost out of sight. Against the choking sand cloud, I plodded towards this temple, which, as I neared it, loomed larger than the rest, and eschewed a doorway far less clogged with caked sand. I would have entered had not the terrific force of the icy wind almost quenched my torch. It poured madly out of the dark door, sighing uncannily as it ruffled the sand and spread among the weird ruins. Soon it grew fainter, and the sand grew more and more still, till finally all was at rest again. But a presence seemed stalking among the spectral stones of the city, and when I glanced at the moon, it seemed to quiver, as though mirrored in the unquiet waters. I was more afraid than I could explain. Not enough to dull my thirst for wonder. So as soon as the wind was quite gone, I crossed into the dark chamber from which it had come. This temple, as I had fancied from the outside, was larger than either of those I had visited before, and was presumably a natural cavern, since it bore winds from some region beyond. Here I could stand quite upright, but saw that the stones and altars were as low as those in other temples. On the walls and roof, I beheld for the first time some traces of pictorial art of the ancient race. Curious, curling streaks of paint that had almost faded or crumbled away. And on the two of the altars I saw, with rising excitement, a maze of well-fashioned, curvilinear carvings. As I held my torch aloft, it seemed to me that the shape of the roof was too regular to be natural. I wondered what prehistoric cutters of stone had first worked upon. Their engineering skill must have been vast. Then, a brighter flare of the fantastic flame showed that form which I had been seeking, the opening to those remoter abysses whence the sudden wind had blown. And I grew faint when I saw that it was a small and plainly artificial door, chiseled in solid rock. I thrust my torch within, beholding a black tunnel which, a roof, arching low over a rough flight of very small, numerous, and steeply descending steps. I shall always see those steps in my dreams, for I came to learn what they meant. At the time, I hardly knew whether to call them steps, or mere footholds in a precipitous descent. My mind was whirling with mad thoughts, and the words and warning of Arab prophets seemed to float across the desert from the land that men know to the nameless city that men dare not know. As I hesitated for only a moment before advancing through the portal, and commencing to climb cautiously down the steep passage. Feet first, as though on a ladder. It is only, and the terrible phantasms of drugs or delirium that any other man could have such a descent as mine. The narrow passage led infinitely down, like some hideous, haunted well, and the torch I held above my head could not light the unbeknownst depths toward which I was crawling. I lost track of the hours. I forgot to consult my watch. Though I was frightened when I thought of the distance I must be traversing. There were changes of direction and of steepness, and once I came to a long, low, level passage, where I had to wriggle my feet first along the rocky floor, holding my torch at arm's length beyond my head. The place was not high enough for kneeling. After that there were more of the steep steps, and I was still scrambling down interminably when my failing torch died out. I do not think I noticed it at the time. When I did notice it, I was still holding it above me, as if it were ablaze. I was quite unbalanced with that instinct for the strange and the unknown, which had made me a wanderer upon the earth, and a haunter of far, ancient, and forbidden places. In the darkness, there flashed before my mind fragments of my cherished treasury of demonic lore, sentences from Alhazred, the mad Arab, paragraphs from the apocryphal nightmares of Damascus, and infamous lines from the delirious image du monde of Gautier de Metz. I repeated queer extracts and muttered of Phraseab and the demons that floated with him down the Oxus, later chanting over and over again a phrase from one of Lord Dunsany's tales, the unreverberate blackness of the abyss. Once the descent grew amazingly steep. I recited something in sing-song from Thomas Moore until I feared to recite more. A reservoir of darkness black, as witches' cauldrons are when filled, with moon-drugs in the eclipse distilled, leaning to look my foot might pass, down through that chasm I saw beneath, as far as vision could explore, the jetty sides as smooth as glass, looking as if just varnished o'er. With that dark pitch, the seat of death rose out upon its slimy shore.